Greetings, welcome to APchemistrycourse. Today I'm going to talk about mistakes in the vsepr theory. Alright, so in the previous video we talked about the vsepr theory and about the families of the vsepr theory, and in the coming video we're going to talk about the family with the 5 things and the 6 things. Now let's talk about the common mistakes that students fall into so you don't fall into such mistakes. Alright, the first mistake, which is going to be in the compound selenium dichloride. So we're going to have selenium right over here, lowest of structure, right over here. We're going to have chlorine, a single bond for chlorine. And what they're going to do is that looking at the shape, they see it's flat. So they will assume that because it's flat, it's going to be the family of the 2 things, or the linear. And that's the first mistake. Looking at the lowest of structure and directly determining the type of the molecular geometry of such compound. Molecular geometry is just simply the shape. We're talking about the shape of the molecule. Alright, so in order to avoid such mistakes, you have to count how many things you have. Chlorine, and then the number of electrons, lone pair of electrons, and in that way you'd avoid such mistake. Next question, which is going to talk about, or next part, my bad, which is going to be forgetting the lone pairs of electrons. It means they look at this loose structure and they don't notice that we have a lone pair of electrons. And in that way, they will also draw a linear shape, forgetting that there's 2 lone pair of electrons. They know that the idea, you can't look at the loose structure and just directly determine the shape because we have a straight line, but they forgot the idea that we have the lone pair of electrons. Alright, so in that way we won't have a linear, we would have a bent with 2 lone pair of electrons. Alright, another mistake which is going to be very, very common, it's going to be when we're dealing with with the trigonal planar, which is going to be an example of, why did I use my hands? Alright, it's going to be an example of pH. So we're going to have phosphorus right over here. Here are the valence electrons, single. So the first mistake, they're going to look at this model. They're going to count hydrogen, 3. So they look at this family chart and they will see, aha, we have 3 right over here. So it's going to be probably a trigonal planar because you have 3 things. And that is a mistake because they forgot the lone pair of electrons. Alright, so that's a mistake, forgetting the lone pair of electrons and determining from the shape of the Lewis structure. Alright, and another mistake that most of students fall into when they start dealing with the vsepr model of N, H, 3, NH3, ammonia. Alright, so when they also look at such compound, they might also fall into the problem of mistakenly considering the number of the lone pairs of electrons as a thing. Usually students just fall for that problem when it's their first day to the lesson. They think that counting the number of lone pair of electrons, they count it as a atom. So they'll take a tetrahedral for such compound, but it's incorrect. And the last point, it's just going to be when we have the last problem, which is reading the question correctly. Sometimes the question tells you, for example, to plot in the Lewis structure. You see that the question doesn't have any Lewis structure, you just have the formula, and you're just surprised that there's no Lewis structure. Well, you just have to plot it on your own. Most students just freak out and they leave the question thinking that there's a mistake. Alright, so this is all about our lesson for today, and I hope it was useful. Try your best to focus on the paper and not make such mistakes. Alright, have a good day.